Let's talk about some Star Realms.
Well, so Star Realms, I guess, in some ways is the opposite in time. Um, a game will probably last 5 or 10 minutes, in my experience.
That might be a little bit different than 40 hours.
Yeah, it's a card based game. You can buy it as a paper and ink card based game, and then there's also an iPad app. You said you have it too. Will do you play it on iPad or is there an Android version?
I do not. I own the card and something. I want to say pen and paper version, but that's not how this actually goes.
Paper and ink. Paper and ink.
The card and ink version. I own the physical cards.
You're an old fashioned man with his old fashioned cards. God darn it! You're an honest man.
I'm not old.
The iPad version is free for the basic kind of uh, uh, game, and then you can upgrade it, and there's expansions and all that stuff, which costs you money. But I guess before I get into that, I should sort of get into what the game is.
Free game. I did not
Uh,
actually know that, but yes, tell us about the game.
so it's card based. It's a deck building game. It has a science fiction theme. So a little bit of a link, not mechanically dissimilar to Attack Wing, except I guess it's turn based, but thematically very close. And the central sort of mechanic is you lay out a row of cards in front of you, and then each of you have a deck, which starts off with a set number of space dollar cards and a set number of damage cards. You each start at a certain amount of life. And I think at the beginning of the game, one person starts with 3, one person starts with 5. But anyway, you play your hand. It doesn't cost anything to play cards out of your hand, and the cards all give you something. Uh, in the beginning, it's either one damage or one space gold, and so then this is essentially the crux of the game. You use the damage to kill your opponent, and you use the money to buy uh, better ships from what's called the trade row in the center. And when you buy those ships, they go in with your discard pile. And then when your deck is empty, you shuffle them back up. So as you keep going through your deck, you have your bad starting cards, but then you're moving in your increasingly better cards as you get more money. Some ships give you more money. Some ships do a lot of damage. That's sort of the basic thing. Beyond that, there's 4 factions. Gameplay wise, that's important because if you have factions, if you have 2 cards of the same faction, often there's a cumulative benefit that will let you do other things. And each faction is sort of geared toward different things. There's the blobs, and they're kind of like and flavor wise, it's kind of nice because it's similar to that last game being sort of a smorgasbord of great fantasy things. This takes cool flavor stuff from different science fiction things.
All the space stuff.
Yeah, all that space stuff. So the blobs are a little like the Zerg actually, and they're really focused on damage. Their ships do a lot of damage, and then their extra ability normally when there's another kind of blob ship there is to do even more damage.
Mm-hmm.
So they can do an awful lot of damage in a hurry.
Yeah. The red numbers. I've got some cards up right now. The red numbers are dealing damage to your opponent or any the bases they control or things like that. The gold number is on the bottom. Is how much money you have to spend to try to buy them from the row on the top.
Yeah, that's right. And then the other unit in the game is life, which is the mechanic, a little bit of the Trade Federation. We know where the name came from, but they're not that similar. This is more democracy run amok, I guess. But what they generally do is produce dollars and produce life. So you're not directly. They do damage, but you're not doing enough to kill your opponent if he's for example, playing the blobs, but you will have a ton of money, which will let you buy the higher end ships more quickly and a lot more of them. There's the Star Empire, and their mechanic is card draw. So they draw extra cards. So when you play your cards, if the Star Empire ability lets you draw more from your deck, so they do generally less damage, but you are drawing more of them, so they're getting sometimes even exceeding the damage output of the blobs.
And also messing with your opponent's hand.
Sorry, yeah, that's true. They will sometimes make your opponent have to discard a card. So now instead of playing 5 cards, which is your hand size after the first turn anyway, you're playing 4, which is going to have an impact. And then the last faction, which is kind of an interesting take, I think, or personally interesting anyway, is the Machine Cult.
Yeah.
And what its central mechanic is you can, instead of it allows you to remove cards from the game essentially that are in your discard pile or your hand, which seems almost like a disadvantage at first, but what you're doing is eliminating those lower power cards that you get at the beginning of the game, so that all your good stuff you're drawing far more often. And even if it doesn't have as much bang for a buck as, say, a blob destroyer, you're drawing it twice as often and getting value out of it there.
Oh yeah, and also it does make some kind of thematic sense because they are machine cult. They are making themselves run more efficiently.
That's right, and they're trying to sort of evolve past the pathetic needs of humans.
We've got Omani over here in the chat. Star Realms is the best game you can carry in your pocket.
Yeah, that's kind of the central virtue to it. The starter is just one about the size of a regular deck of cards. 5 to 10 minutes. If you and your buddy are there meeting a friend, and he's 10 minutes late, well, that's a game of Star Realms, right? So it's pretty good that way. And then one of the things, it's actually a fun social game too when you're just hanging out with one friend. It doesn't take the learning curve is very easy. When my friend taught me the game, I was already winning games 4 or 5 games, 3 or 4 games in.
But he regrets teaching you that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the other thing. We were splitting them, right? There's a pretty high variance. I think if chess is your great beloved game, this is probably not the game for you. Because sometimes, your opponent will buy two blob ships and get them right again the next turn, and you're pretty far behind already. But that being said, there is some strategy to it, as we were talking about before, Will.
Social game with one friend.
Pardon me?
It says, a social game with one friend.
Yeah, true enough. You can have some pretty big turns near the end of the game. So if you start to lose at the beginning, that's not how it's going to end up, right? And you can have pretty dramatic turns where you're cutting down maybe half of the guys' starting life in one fell swoop.
Yeah, especially if you get like a lucky hand of like all the good stuff you need and none of the shaft from your deck.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not over till it's over, which is good. That it's engaging. A lot of games, once things go bad, they generally stay bad, and the winner of a game long before it's over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is not one of the a lot of the deck builder games that came before this. The Dominion, the Thunderstone, even the Ascension. It's a deck building game. You buy cards, and it's basically just kind of a race to get points. You're never actually directly going against the other player for the most part. This game changes that, and that is exactly what the designers really wanted. The guys who designed this were like Magic players, I think, weren't they? Like top level Magic players.
That's what I think I heard, right? I can't remember specifically though.
And the real fun part about that is, watching your opponent's life slowly trickle through your fingers.
Yeah. And there are interesting hiccups too, because the two kinds of cards you can get are ships and then battle stations or stations, and some of the stations you have to kill them before you can start damaging your opponent again, almost like a taunt creature in Hearthstone in a way,
Mhm.
and so that can really be a big hiccup in your math. Uh, so yeah, it's never over till it's over.
Because there's the ones that just directly protect, your influence points or your life or whatever it is in this game. And then there's those that just have really cool abilities but don't actually protect your life points. However, your opponent wants to kill them so that you don't keep getting that effect. Uh, they're talking in chat that this is actually a game that can be played with. It's of course a great design 2-player game, but there are also other ways to play 2v2 teams, 4-player free for all. Apparently, it's a 1 versus 3 too. I don't think I've tried that one yet.
Yeah, I've just played the basic 1 versus 1.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, so there you go. So I was wise beyond my knowledge. It is a great social game. Um,
And the more players there are, the more you can yell at the person who stole that card you wanted to buy.
that can be fun when you're sitting across from someone, and boy, do you want to buy that card.
You don't even have any blobs in your deck. Why would you take my blob destroyer?
Exactly, because you really want to build synergy. You don't necessarily want to be drafting the best card across all 4 factions, because those secondary abilities that kick in with the factions really come to dominate the game. So you don't, there's that element to it where you want to shy away maybe from what your opponent's grabbing, or maybe you do want to grab that blob destroyer because better that you have it than he does.
Because every extra blob destroyer doubles the effectiveness of the one before it.
Yeah, exactly. It's marginal gains until a big sort of blowout turn, or several big blowout turns.
Cool.
Yeah, so I mean I would say it's on the simple side, but pretty fun, and certainly I think its greatest virtue, as that commenter mentioned, is how portable it is.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and you said you haven't had the expansions yet, right?
Yeah, I've just played the base game, which is so I don't play it with sort of the same eye to strategy as I would, attack wing, or well, I guess that's not a super, something more like Magic, I guess. But the base expansion has been enough, just to kill time and just for general, merriment.
And if you do go in for the expansions, the expansions are like mini packs of cards, so all 5 expansions maybe doubles the size of the deck. So it's not actually that much. So you can actually get them fairly cheap. Like the base game is like $12 or something. If you find it in a good spot.
Oh yeah, it's super cheap.
You can get all the expansions also for another $12, and they add things like 3 or 4 versus 1, where the one is the game, so you're fighting the invading outer galaxy aliens or something like that. You've got additional new cards that increase bigger bases, bigger ships. But the other interesting ones are what is it? I think it's gambits. I believe gambits actually give you a starting bonus. So you get 2 or 3 gambit cards, and you get to keep one of them, and that is your bonus for the game. So it's kind of like you have a race selection. You pick the guys that get 1 extra card every turn, or you pick the guys that get a free $1 every turn, or that's good scrap something every turn. So having an ability from the start of the game actually, helps you, divide up yourself more than always having the same start, which is something I found in a couple other games. If you're all starting exactly the same, sometimes it starts to get, your strategies start really developing the same way.
And the first few turns are pretty stale.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a good way to add differentiation between different sides. It sounds like.
Mm-hmm. And I enjoy it whenever I get a chance to play it.
Yeah, very fun. I definitely recommend it. I'm sure by the sounds like it, we have some commenters that could talk about it forever or for a bit longer. But I think it's pretty simple, and that's what I like about it.
Never played. Oh no, we've played. He's played. He's only played the base version though. And you said the app version is actually free.
The basic app version is free, and so you can just play against the AI, and then to there's harder difficulties and person versus person play that opens up once you put some of your dollars in.
Oh me, yes, I've played. I own it. I know who you are, Omani. Haven't I played this game with you? Would have sworn I did, but hey. I haven't played all the expansions very often yet, but I definitely have played the game before, and we just said I owned it. I guess that's not really saying anything, because there's a lot of games that people own that they don't always get to play very often.
Yeah. Speaking of which, next game for me is a big one.
Ah, let's see. Next up on the chopping block. Let's see, I probably don't need that window anymore. Maybe we played. I probably exploited the rules to win. See? You know these guys play with me. They know me that well.